Alright, this next section is probably going to be not titled How to Build Your Spaceship.
Hello and welcome to, Carlin's Worlds. Yeah, that should work. I'm a wanderer, a tinkerer, sometimes a nomad, a military veteran. I do things differently. There will be tinkering. I have a motorcycle, a truck, and a school bus. I live off-grid, so there will be some solar, batteries, inverters, and maybe even some wind. It blows. And that's all I can fit into about 30 seconds. Oh, and please, if you like any of this, it would be really awesome if you could subscribe and click that notify bell. Drop a comment if you have any questions or ideas. Share, like, comment, subscribe, notify. Oh, and Patreon if you're really an awesome kind of person. Cool. On with the show already.
After much mucking about and thinking about this and everything. Alright, I can see there's a mirror, right? The camera doesn't quite see the mirror. Yay. Right? Yes. Okay, good enough. The way I started looking at this, I started sketching it on paper, then I started thinking about doing it on the computer. But the biggest problem with doing it on the computer is you have to first completely replicate what's here so that when you do it on the computer it matches, and then you come back and you see you missed something. I don't need that level of precision for what I'm doing here. I am going to try hard to get things nice and straight, and that's going to be about it. I'm not going to sweat it too much. Alright, so to start with, yonder 2x4. Alright, yep, that's in the shot. Good, okay, so 2x4, I measured side to side, come up with a number, I think 89 inches. I chopped off a little bit off the end of a common wall stud. This 2x4's got a pretty good warp to it. Okay, here's the trick, if you're going to take anything away from this at all. This is the first prototype. Months thinking about this, and then just literally a few days ago is when I gutted all this stuff. I decided that, one, I'm never going to drive the bus again, hopefully. Irony is the day after I did this, I started thinking about it, and I'm like, no, stop, don't think about that. Just go forward. Rather than trying to be perfect on the first try, which is crippling, go with something that is kind of close and then make adjustments, all right? So, the first piece, I cut it, set it up here, didn't really like how it was sitting, then realized if I notched the corners, because the corners of the windows come in a little bit, okay, that made it better. So then I got it where I wanted it, okay? Then I made some reference marks here, next to where the clamp is, and get it in place. Put a little bit of tension on it so it doesn't move. All right, so I'm gonna clamp both sides so that it's at kind of my starting marks. Okay, now it's not going to move too much. If I bump it, it'll stay put. All right. Second step, I was looking at it and I'm like, okay, there's this gap up here. I want to make it a nice flat surface. All right. Dig around the scrap pile. Realize that if you lay a couple 2x4s up here, that's pretty good. All right. So don't sweat it too much. Get a littler one for the corner. A little bit too big, maybe. Alright. Maybe I'll just put the little one up here for now. Next, I'm going to take, I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to work from this half over, not glue anything. Okay, here's the biggest thing. We're not gluing anything yet. Get the piece roughed out, set it in place, and then use that for a template, one for the other side. And if I'm really straight, this should be symmetrical. But I figured, okay, if I waste a whole sheet of OSB and get this the way I want it, that's about $15. If I waste a month thinking about it, what's 1 month of your free time worth? I'm thinking I'll waste a little bit of OSB and get it done with. This was one stud I had left over from the last project. Wasn't enough to do anything else with. All right, this is a good place to put it. Since this isn't actually a spaceship, if we build it out of wood, not a big deal. Maybe I'll paint it to look like carbon fiber when I'm finished. So that's kind of where I'm starting at. So that this doesn't move too much, I'm going to drill a couple holes through the wood into the metal. This is not very thick galvanized steel, so hopefully I can get it to work where I can just run a couple holes into it, screw it to the steel. I'm just going to use woodworking, like decking screws to hold things in place. Then I'll put this piece on here. What this piece is going to do, this is my computer monitor, I'm sure there's a word for it, bracket, arm, mount, whatever thing. Two ways this could go. This would be the simple way. Set it on the edge closest to me and then just turn these around. That would totally be fine, except I have this looking right at me. Another possibility is if I set this on backwards, drop it down this slot and just leave a slot here. The slot could be really useful because I can use that for cable management then. So if I actually cut a slot into this, then I can just drop my cables down into the thing and then have hooks underneath and run the cables where I want them. So I think that's a good idea. So since I had a good idea, slot for cables. Okay. When I put the OSB on top of this, I'll just probably rip 2 slices with my saw. Take a spade bit, woodworking, cut a round on each end, then I can drop the cables down and it'll look nice. Okay, the bracket. So I'm going to draw a line where the slot will be, but it won't actually be through. I won't cut into the 2x4, I'll leave the slot where the opening is, because right now I've got this hole all the way along here. I pulled this back a little bit, so then that'll work. These pieces, since this is going to be attached to both ends, these pieces I'm just going to float them in here and then run some screws down into it just to hold them, in place. And the OSB will tie to that. OSB's got enough flex, it'll make up for the little bit of misalignment. This board is warped end to end when I do this for final. I like the idea of this being a 2x4 because it's got enough strength to hold the monitors. The way this is set up, if I put this over here, the first 24-inch monitor will end right at the center line and then be about here, and the second one will kind of wrap into the corner a little bit over here, which is probably just off of view, but this is where the center of this post will be, off center a little bit. And well, I can simulate what the monitor is going to be. It's almost this size. This isn't exactly right, but it's close enough. From my point of view, if I set the monitor down a little bit below the edge, I can see over this still, so I don't really lose my view. All right. This is just a random piece that was close by. It has nothing to do with reality. Okay, that's kind of a starting point. From there, what I was finding on my dreaming stage, before you crash into reality and realize it's not going to work the way you want it to, have fun with the dreaming stage because it's going to suck after that. But I'm like, okay, I really needed to get a monitor hanging here first and then build backwards from there. All right. So this was kind of like the most important piece, to get this thing in first, set my monitor on it, actually attach the monitor, sit back and actually look at it. From there, I'll figure out my keyboard tray and anything else that comes up. Future projects, and the way I'm looking at this right now, if I can get myself set up here with at least one of the computers and a monitor that I can work here for a while and work on something, just sit here and actually not just sit here and pretend, but actually sit here and produce something. It might be video editing, it might be writing something, whatever. Just do something here long enough to get the feel for it. Then I can decide, do I want to move it? Now I want to leave this a little bit adjustable still. I'm not going to lock everything in place, because it never fails when you do that, the next week something new happens and you're like, oh, I wish I could move this a little bit, but it's, now it's glued down, so you can't do anything with it. So the next part of this side is what I think I'm going to have for my quote-unquote artist drawing station. And I haven't exactly figured out what I want here. I do know I'm going to want some kind of a shelf above that I can store a bunch of little things, pencils and erasers and whatever. and then probably have a slanted drawing surface here. I think eventually, because I am planning on buying a bunch of plexiglass because I want to redo some windows in plexiglass. So that'll have me a bunch of leftover pieces. But in the meantime, I've got a nice 2 foot by 4 foot piece of Formica board that I could use, so build a bracket, set it here so I can still look out over the top. So when I think it's a good idea when you're doing something on the computer to stop once in a while and just stare off, let your eyes relax a little bit. So that's kind of in my design. So this seat at the moment doesn't rotate, I don't think, and it probably won't rotate this way. But eventually I want to set it up so that I can rotate the seat looking out the side, looking out the front, and also looking the other way. So work on that later, but when I do that, that's one of the reasons I wanted to take all the stuff out that was here. Now I've got enough room. I can sit here comfortably, and I'd have a nice area to draw, and then I'd have the computer on the side for reference art. But in the meantime, I just kind of want to get this thing set up and going. Now here's the fun part, and I talked about this on the other videos, but in case you didn't watch all of that, by getting the computers up here, I've already eliminated 4 feet worth of computers just behind me here. There was the big workstation that had 2 24-inch monitors. I just completely took that out. That's where this came from, all right? And then you go back a couple more feet, and then there's the laptop workstation that's the same size, so another 4 feet. That's usually where I shoot the videos from. So if I can get that up to here, even temporarily, I've just freed up 8 feet of space. And that's going to go a long ways to getting started on my bus conversion. I've lived in this for 1.5 years right now. And I have not had enough room to do hardly anything in here to make it just a little bit nicer. I got a couple shelves up, and that's about as far as I got. So by freeing up some space, that's almost 1/4 of the floor space in the bus when I get the laptop up to here. All right, so then I can look at taking the shelf down that's there, working through the windows, replacing some of the windows. Windows in the bus are really cold. We're getting up to cold weather now. Last night I got down into the 40s for the first time. So that kind of gives you a little kick in the butt, like maybe you should start thinking about, replacing windows, maybe insulating, that kind of a thing. So as soon as I can get this workable so that I can have my laptop up here, then that frees up the space back there. That's kind of the goal right now. Once I can get that done, then I can work through, do windows, build nicer shelves, set up this area, insulate the walls. Then I'll take my bed and move it to this side, do the same on that side, and then I'll have half the bus insulated in windows. That could still take months at this rate, but it's a project that I haven't been able to start because I just didn't have the room. I kept putting it off, thinking I was going to build a storage shed or build a workshop or build something that I could then move the stuff out to temporarily. Well, here we are into October, and I still haven't really built anything that I can put things in. So when this idea kind of popped up, I'm like, okay, there's the solution to my problem. If I can get just enough stuff out of the way, then I can work at a few feet at a time even. If I can just do 6 feet, take out 2 windows, replace them, and then shuffle the stuff, and then do the next 6 feet and shuffle the stuff and just keep working that way. When I get towards the back half of the bus, my goal probably, I'll leave a couple windows in, but I don't look out of the windows very much back there anyway. So where I talked about plexiglass before, on the back half, I'm probably going to take the window out and just put OSB in and be done. That'll be a lot warmer. I'll miss the light, but it'll be a lot warmer. The way I'm looking to do that, as far as the windows, I'll make a video when I get there, but the short answer is bus windows are easily removed. The way I'm going to do that will basically follow the footprint of how the window goes in, so that I can always take it out and replace it with something else later. So I'm not welding something in. is basically it. I'm just going to make something out of wood and then set it in place, and then we'll be done. All right, so I just want to kind of get an idea of a reference shot of what this is going to look like, and then I can start zipping a couple pieces in and then kind of go from there. So, good. Moving on. Okay, of course, right where the clamp is where I'm trying to drill my holes. So, above that. Somewhere else, probably block my shot. Yep, that'll work. Strategy time. If you're going to build something, especially as a prototype, make it as easy as you can first. No sense getting complicated, right? So, a couple things that I've been working through. Pick a couple of sizes of hardware that are really common and easy to find. For instance, a 1/4 inch bolt, typically we use 7/16 hardware. You know, so your 7/16 wrench, 7/16 socket. Pick one that's easy, and then buy a bunch of them. So when I buy 7/16 hardware, I'll buy a bunch of different lengths of bolts, nuts, lock washers, you know, in a 100 pack. Okay, I put a great big fender washer in there, and I'm using a hole that's already there. So that's good enough to hold it in place. It's not going to move anywhere. All right. Get you a close-up on that one. Nothing rocket science here. Just like that. I got the fender washer overlapping the hole. I drilled my hole off-center in that hole so that it'll kind of hold it in place. Just throw something together that's quick and easy, right? This is going to be something that we'll take apart about 100 times until we get it where we want it. So keep it easy. Now we take the clamps off. Except when it does. Oh, okay, that happens. Just missed that hole. Alright, not the end of the world. We'll just fix it. That one worked really good though. Also, I talked about making things easier. These are 1/4 inch hardware, but I'm drilling 3/8 holes. That just makes things just a lot easier to put together. At this point, I don't need it to be, you know, super tight or anything. I want to make it easy. This is kind of a hobby, so why make it difficult on yourself, right? There'll be plenty of things that get difficult. So we'll sacrifice a washer. Get it where I want it. That's kind of cool. Hey, look at that. It's working that time. See? Nothing ever works the first time. Just get that out of your head. Things will go wrong. Put it together backwards and just check it out. I think for now I'm going to leave it just like this instead of turning it around, because this thing faces either way, so that's not a big deal. So now I can hang a couple monitors on here and then move forward. So once the monitor's in place, then I can figure out where I want to put my keyboard. Later on, when this piece is attached to a board up here, it'll be a lot more rigid. It won't rock as much. Alright, next step is hang a monitor on there. Anybody that doesn't know about that, that's a standard monitor bracket, I guess. There's a couple of standards, like everything, but it's not as bad as VHS versus Beta or whatever. This one's got both. well, actually there's more than two even. These are 75 millimeter, and these are 100 millimeter, and that's the distance between them. This monitor uses 100. Makes it nice. Okay, that's it for that. Now, with just one monitor on it, worst case scenario, right? Yeah, it's got some bounce, but it's not too bad. Now, because the original setup that I tried this with, just as a test, I tried to hang this bracket right off of the metal tab that's up here. There's a little short shelf, and it didn't have quite enough depth, and the pipe was actually hitting the windshield, so now I'm, you know, a good 4 inches or so off the windshield, or maybe 6 inches even. Yeah, probably at least 6 inches. Also, the windshield tapers back at the top, and it's further forward in the middle, so it tapers back a little bit. So you really want to watch for something like that when you're doing a design. Take a moment to look at it from a different angle, because I didn't realize how much this tilted back until I put this up here and it goes clunk, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. You know, so just kind of be aware of that kind of thing. Now, when I turn this around, you know, if I put the bracket hidden, like in where the slot's going to be, this is fairly well centered, so it's not going to change me my layout too much. All the ports are back here, easy to get to. So what I've been looking at, because this was actually made for a 30-inch monitor, I can push this all the way out straight, and where I made my mark, yeah, here's the center of the windscreen, so I'm actually at the center point already, right there. Now I can push that all the way to there, so it's actually flush with that, which is kind of nice. And then I can put the second one over here. And again, because of how these are laid out, I can shorten that and put a smaller monitor here, or a bigger monitor up to 30 inches, and still be okay. Now, what I had been looking at, and this is why I really just needed to put it here, how high do I want this? Where it is right now and where I'm sitting, I'm looking right across the top of the monitor so I can see the hills. I have to sit up a little bit to see closer to me, but I actually don't see the windbreak out there, which is a good thing, really. So I could have this sitting forward of the edge, or I could pull it back and then I could let the whole thing down, because this part of the bracket is a clamp and I can loosen it up and move it all the way down to here or all the way up to here. You got a lot of vertical adjustment. Also, like I mentioned before, this can rotate. So I could set one vertically, which is great for writing because you can see a whole page vertically. If you've never had, if you've never done that, usually in like Windows or whatever in your software, you can tell it that the monitor is rotated, and then you can just read, the entire page instead of, because you're thinking about a page being like this, but your screen is wide and short, so you can only see half a page. Well, if you do it this way, you can see a page, page and a half. And in high def, you can easily read, you can probably put 2 pages worth of dialogue here and be able to read it. The font is big enough that you can still read it just fine. Also, cup holders are coming. Alright, so don't whack this. And these are tiltable. They're all, you can tighten the nut on here. If it's, if you put it somewhere and it just goes flop, you reach back, and they usually come with adjustable nuts so you can put tension on it. The way my bus is parked, sunrise is that way, so that'll never cause a glare. I'll be looking right into the sun. Winter, I'll get more light coming through the side windows. Sunset will be behind me. So this will be an interesting thing to watch for. In this setup, am I going to get any sun hitting the monitors? I think what I'll do when I get this more permanently mounted, I'm going to take something like, I've got some insulation, bubble wrap foil, or foil over bubble wrap insulation. I think what I'll do with that is tape it to the back of the monitor to protect the plastic from the sun coming in, because eventually the plastic will just fall apart and then the whole thing will fall down. So you want to be thinking about that. Also right up here I've got the sun visor that comes with all school buses. I just push it up out of the way for now, but that might be something I could play with, you know, have a sun visor right above my monitors. It'd be kind of nice. Actually though, I'm liking where this is sitting right now. A soon coming project is I'm going to have to move that monitor. I'm going to set myself up so that the camera has a mount up here, and then I'll have the second monitor over here. On the other desk, the camera actually sits on one of these and then it just stays there. The next step, now I've got enough room behind here, I can still drop all my cables down, that'll be nice, and then I can pull them across and zip tie them. So I don't have cables coming across my desk. I like that. Probably for temporary, I'll end up with a power strip down here somewhere. The next thing then, set myself up on this side for my laptop, which might, actually if I put the laptop down here a little bit, that would work. This is the fun part, just kind of, literally the plan for this, I'm not going to say today because this will be multi-days, but I'm just going to sit here, think, okay, I want something about here, and then take a piece and then bolt it there, and then use it for a couple of days and just see if I like it. And if I don't, I'll move it, you know. Usually I end up with just a desk that's about as good as I can get. My plan for this is to actually make it really, really perfect for what I want to do. And because I'm not doing just one thing, that then means that I get to play with different designs. And when I talked about earlier having an artist station and a typing station and maybe a different station for doing something else, that's why. That way I can spread things out a little bit. So for instance, I've got a Wacom tablet, I've got a mouse, and I've got a trackball. Each one is really good for one task, but not necessarily at the same time. So this way I'll have, you know, one example when I first look at video that I've shot, especially out here, I'm realizing that the laptop uses too much power for just sitting here watching 10 or 12 hours of footage. So I've started using a Raspberry Pi, which is a little tiny handheld computer that has just enough processing power in it to play back the video clips that I'm shooting. So on the other workstation, I've got one of these monitors and the Raspberry Pi, and that's all that's on there. And I use that to watch the videos first, and then while I'm watching them, I can be typing notes also on the Raspberry Pi. So I'll do kind of picture in picture. I'll have a text editor and my file manager and a program playing the video clips. And that works great. You know, so I can watch this clip and say, okay, video clip number 1, 2, 3. I'll watch the whole thing, delete, you know. And so I'll save my notes, and it'll say right next to the file name, delete, you know. And then I'll move on to the next one. It's like, okay, that one's got some good stuff, save that. And then the next one I'll delete. So when I get over to the video editing session, I've already eliminated some of my clips, so I don't have to think about them anymore. So by spreading out my tasks and spreading out my computers, I can do one thing that works really well. That's what I like about this idea, though, having one 2x4 that goes all the way across. This thing I can loosen up and I can move it all the way on both sides. That's the good thing. It gives me the ability to slide things until I get them where I want. And I may never lock it down completely. I may decide later on, yeah, you know, I want to move it again. No big deal. I may also in the future build my own brackets, but for now these are good enough. But having looked at this for a while, you know, on my other desk, I had these all the way up at the top. But with this being so high to start with, I can maybe even go lower. It's a very good possibility. So I guess the next thing, we got a couple minutes left on here. See how many stickers I can stab myself with here. This is kind of how it starts. Yesterday, I literally sat here and held the monitor in different spots to figure it out. Okay, that's too high for a keyboard, but it would be handy to have a shelf that was maybe not quite that high. But if I did a little 6-inch, this was part of my idea. Do the shelf in layers. So one layer for the monitor to sit on, and then you drop down, and then a second layer that's maybe 6 inches deep, and then the third layer would be a foot deep where you'd have room for your mouse and your trackball. Okay. Somewhere in there. It's kind of fun. Get it all custom to what you want today. Tomorrow you won't like it, but that's okay. So I'm literally going to just, because one of the tricks is, and I went through this a lot in Austin when I first started doing the spaceship idea. I wanted to make it look like the ceiling was really low. And so I set my chairs at a low height, and then I made the desk sit really low. And then for the next 2 weeks, I kicked that desk over and over with my knee, getting into it. So then I knew I had a problem, so then I could kind of back up and try it again a little different way. This might be about right though. It's got enough room. I got two 2x4s, so that gives me 3 inches above my knees. So I probably won't kick that too many times. Some of the desks have a cutout here, so that you don't have something right over your feet or your whatever, and so you can kind of profile it out. So out here, because it's too close to the door coming in, I might round this edge and then come in, and then on this side is where the artist drawing station is going to be. So I could simulate that with another piece there. That's actually pretty good. How about that for grabbing 2 pieces off the scrap pile? Actually, it's the only 2 good pieces I have left probably, but still. Tape measure where I can reach it even. This is awesome. It might go, oops, damn it. Okay, marker. Should have grabbed a notepad. So I'm going to think 5 inches lower from here to be where I want my next piece to be. Don't drop everything. Minutes. I wouldn't be that lucky, would I? Yeah, these are a little too short, I think. It's not going to work. Alright. I could do clamp it. I don't get it from. Close enough. Has an idea. These iron pipes with caps on the end were actually the legs from the desk that I am still using, and the other one in Austin. How I solved my kicking the table problem is I just went and bought longer pipes. Or maybe I got shorter pipes, I forget which way I went. But these probably won't be exactly right. But if I attach these, and I got a flange for the top edge, attach it to this piece, then I can stack up 2x4s underneath it to dial in the height. That'll give me a good starting point. And what I really want to do is test this just rough for a few days and then make a decision if it's the right height or not. Also, I can height adjust this seat because this is the driver's seat for the school bus still. I haven't brought my other seat up here yet, but that'll be part of the process because I want to get, I like the fact that this seat was matched to the window height, and I drove it 500 miles and it was actually pretty comfortable. That's kind of the experience when I get into editing. I sometimes sit for 6 or 7 hours and hardly move. So the fact that this is a driver's seat that's made to sit in for a while, that's actually a good thing. Also, the seats that I have are leather Recaro seats from Mercedes. That's just kind of fun to say. When I first decided I was going to buy seats for my Spaceship, I literally was looking on Craigslist and thought, oh, there was, a couple minivans where the guys had taken out the seats that were in the back, and I was looking at them and they were kind of tore up. And I'm scrolling down Craigslist and I see these and I'm like, leather seats from a Recaro. Can you think of a more awesome thing to put? Or leather Recaro seats from Mercedes. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. So I'm like, click, I'll take those ones. And I met the guy and they were legit, I was like, okay, thank you. Told him they were going in a Spaceship and he had that funny look, but it was Austin, and so people tended to just accept things like that. All right, so I'm going to set these up with the pipes and we'll come back. Oh man, this is heavy. This is the piece that I made for in Austin. It's already got the flanges on it and everything. It's too big. I know it's too big. And I also don't want to cut it all up. Oops, backwards. Dang it. It's heavy particle board. Okay. But it's got the flanges on it is the important part. Yeah, it's a little bit too big. I'm hitting the gear shift that I didn't want to take out, and I'm hitting the windshield washer motor. Which Spaceships don't need that anyway. At this point, if something is pretty close, I might use it. Okay, we're on blocks with air brakes. I'm not too worried about this thing rolling away on me. So let's move the gear shifter down at first. Now I said 5 inches down, right? 7, so it's got to come up 2 inches. First to come up, this will be in the way. That's not too difficult to get around. That does stick out quite a bit. So, yeah, I just wanted to see before I took this thing all apart that it was too big or not too big. Okay, Too big. This is why the smart people will just make measurements and cut things outside. But that's really never been a problem for me. Okay. My biggest plan when I'm doing this is, as much as possible, to make it as smaller sections. This is something I haven't really talked about too much yet. Also, that doesn't look like a very good shot, does it? Anyway. When this is done, I think it's going to end up being 2-foot sections that are spliced together, because each section might have a little different angle to it. So instead of trying to make one long, almost 8-foot wide piece, that's not going to be right anyway. Make a little piece that's just dedicated to one thing, and then make the next piece, and then I can work on a little bit of hand waving and magic or something. And we're good. Good. Figured I'd cut a bevel there so I don't kick it so many times. In case you haven't discovered this yet, this end is a hex, and this end is, this particular one is a 3/8 adapter for a socket. What you can do with that now, you can use your little impact driver to take nuts on and off really quickly. And by having one of each handy, there's days where you just need the ratchet, but you can finish it with this, so you break it loose with this and spin this one off or whatever. These little Bosch 12-volt lithium-ion tools, I've got a bunch of them. I bought a couple, liked them so much I just bought a bunch more. I got these as factory refurb on eBay for about half price. Not yet sponsored by Bosch, but hey, I'm always open to offers. They just work really good though. I got a few of the little batteries, which I just left them all on the bus. I'll have to come back in a minute. But they just work really good. So, one, for this thing, typical like Harbor Freight, Northern Tools, eBay kind of a thing. Get the set, you get a 1/4 inch, 3/8, and a 1/2 inch drive. And they're just really handy. When I was a mechanic, I used that kind of stuff a lot. It's easier sometimes than using the air tools, which, air tools are more powerful, but then you're dragging the hose with you. That's just a nice way to go. Cool, done, moving on. Sometimes it's good to take a second and pause. I grabbed this and walked it back inside to look where I wanted to put the legs so I wouldn't hit anything. And I realized that the way it's set up right now, the inboard, like the center section, is going to be right into my knee. So no matter where I put that leg, it won't work. So I'm going to mount legs on the outboard section for now, just to hold it in place. And then I'll grab some scraps and cobble something together to hold the inboard side up to the 2x4. Just as a working, like a prototype, and then I can see if I like the height, and then I'll go back later and look at brackets, which was the idea all along. But this way, I don't put a lot of time into doing something else that I don't really need or like. So I made a reference mark. This is where the legs are going to go, because that's the center of the legs. What's left of the air box is still out there. I took a whole bunch of heater cord and stuff out. Oh man. Hang on a second. Yeah, I was marking this upside down anyway. Yeah, either way, it's still in the way. Wondering where my green edge was. Yeah, 8 inches. That's fine. This will be okay. Still a prototype, right? If you got a square edge, you don't need 2 marks, right? Of course, if you hold it still, that works better. Somewhere there. Good enough. Make it easy on myself. I'm going to drill the holes from the top. assemble them from the bottom. I'm using an oversized bit again, so I don't need super precision. At least these don't go walking around on you. Good enough. See, these, with the oversized holes, they just drop in. That'll make alignment really easy. And I can still tighten it down if I need to without, you know, I don't care if I hurt this stuff a little bit. Ain't a big deal. Let's just do one at a time for now. Stay. You can't see nothing from there, can you? Drain pipe in the way. In a pinch, that would actually be slightly height adjustable, but I'm not too worried about that. This is probably not ideal, but it's very easy and easy to find. And I put caps on the end. Just, you know, so it wouldn't scratch up the floor kind of thing. That was there from before. Cool. Bonus points if we don't whack the camera. Where's the camera? There it is. Good. Alright, now. Yeah. We already know it's too low, so that's not a big surprise. In the right spot for that. Hang on. Thought I heard something. Stay. Apparently the post office is closed now. I have all these alarms set for different times of the day. Okay. So we're too low, which we bring ourselves up a little bit. Now, simulate. We're not yet at the point that we need the level, but it doesn't feel straight. Since I know the bus is relatively level. Okay, that's level there. This is not bad. If I was working off of this monitor, well, no, hang on a second. Yeah, it feels better. I wish I had a little bit more out here, but for a first test, that's about right. I left the damn tape measure out there. It's about the right height, though, I think. So, okay. Now, with that said, that would work. Hey, I think I can do this. One-handed clamps are seriously one of the coolest things ever made. Ah, I was wondering how I was going to do that. this is the trick. If you're going to do something like this, and odds are, if you can't find any friends, maybe that's just me. You're going to want some way to, this falls under rapid prototyping, I think. It's actually pretty close. It's all about the accessories. Mark it in case I bump it later. Alright, let's take a look here. This feels a little bit too close to me. However, yeah, so we'll just have to move it forward. I shouldn't get this too level. I think the bus is a little bit low on that side still. Okay. Give myself 2 more inches there. This end is on the legs. This end is just balancing precariously on the clamp. Okay. Keep some of the flies out or in or something. So if I just put my trackball here. Oh, there we go. There, I can see myself. Don't need the mouse really. You know, this is the kind of thing I'm definitely going to want to use for a while just to get the feel for it. What I've always liked about the trackball is it doesn't move. You just move your finger or your thumb as opposed to needing to be able to move around. If this is not so close to me, careful about that. It's too high. I like mine a little bit lower. Okay. Let's take out 1 2x4. See how easy that is, right? That feels a little better. Still gives me enough room under my legs. I don't know if we can go lower yet. So I'll probably take it down until I kick it and then raise it up again. Okay, take it down a little bit lower. Huh, gear shift. Flies. It's too close to my lap, but that's almost where I want it for typing. So it's not supported on this edge. Now it's got support. It's about where the laptop would go. Over here. So the plan is, I'm going to drill a couple holes here and put some long screws in. As is so often the case, I've already broken my 1/8 inch drill bit, so this may not go very well, but we can always try. I have never liked working with wood. I'll just say that from the get-go. And one of the reasons is it tends to split when you're working on the end of it. Childproof, I see. That should work. I don't want to do any gluing or anything on here, so I can take it apart later. Stopping before I run it too tight, so I don't split it. Stop short, we should be okay. That one looks pretty scabby, let's use it. So, what I'm going to do, I figured somewhere in between, about there. Put that there. Clamp it. And kind of scooch it over. This, I don't think, is going to split. I'm going to shoot it further from the edge. Clamp off. Just drop one down into here to kind of pin it. Now it won't try to run away on me so much. That'll work. I think for a workable prototype, as long as I don't kick this too hard, this will be okay. So now I can bring some power up here, put something here that I can run. I think I'll bring the Raspberry Pi up here. That'll be a good test because I can type on it, I can do video playback at least, and then we'll go from there. Also, yeah, that'll be fine. That'll be totally fine. Okay, I've mentioned this before, but this is a Raspberry Pi. I mean, it's like, that is the entire computer. It's got a Linux operating system. It's got regular ports, so that's an HDMI port. It's powered by USB. It's got USB ports. It's got Ethernet port. Plus, if you know anything about Arduinos, it's got a whole set of general purpose I/O pins, input-output pins, GPIOs. And you can run Arduino type software sketches on here. Also, it's got a port to go out directly to its own monitor and another port for a camera. And that's it. That is the entire computer. These are about like 40 bucks a piece or something like that. It's quite inexpensive. And they run off a USB port. For now, I'm going to run it off this adapter, but I also run it right off of the battery bank sometimes, off of a 12 volt to 5 volt cigarette lighter adapter, and it works well enough. As long as you have enough power. It can't be a 1 amp connector, it's got to be more than 1 amp. So the one I'm using is a 2.1 amp rated, and it seems to work fine. But for now, I'll use the one that they give us. So, with that said, I don't remember if this is on or off. Okay, we'll turn the monitor on first. Now watch how fast it boots. Light on, accessing Raspberry Pis. It's loading a Linux core. It's a lightweight Linux is what it is. And there's our desktop. And we're live. That's it. It boots that fast. It's crazy, right? Couple things to be aware of to keep the cost down. They made these specifically to be able to sell to kids or to give to kids, especially in places like Africa where there wasn't a lot of people getting into computer science, because who can afford, you know, a laptop in some dirt village in Africa, right? So they figured they could make these things cheap enough, and the ones that we buy are putting money back into their profit, that they can then afford to go into these places and make these available. So every time you buy one, you're offsetting the cost for some kid in Africa or whatever, or Chicago for that matter, because they probably need them there too. So Dexter Industries is a company that's dealing with robotics kits for these. I just happened to load that. You can get different distributions of the Linux, or actually the Raspberry Pi operating system, which is usually Raspbian is what they're calling it. If you've used anything Linux, it'll look very familiar. If you haven't, it still looks, it's got enough of the Windows kind of a stuff, you know, you can figure your stuff out. You can find your way around. One thing I'm going to do while I'm thinking of it, documents. I'm going to set the clock, because to keep the cost down, these don't have a clock built in. Like every laptop or every computer in the last 20 years has a clock. They just didn't put it on. So I actually bought some real-time clocks to plug into here, and I just haven't hooked it up yet. What's today's date? I'm going to check the time while I'm at it. Doesn't really matter, but just because. Now we set the date, so now we can set the time. 4:46, 16, 6. Right now it says 2000 up here, 8 o'clock. But that's what it was the last time I used it. So within a minute or two that'll update and then we're done. Exit, that's it. Yeah, there, it's got it already. So if I was doing video on here, what I would do, put this down here. I don't have a clip to watch right now because they're all on the camera. And then we'd have the notepad program over here. And I could be typing away. I'd be watching the clip here, typing here, and then loading the next clip when that one got done. And that's it. For now, I'm just gonna kind of sit here. The pedals are kind of in my way. I was looking at this a couple days ago. When I took everything else apart, I mean, I took the steering wheel out. The steering wheel should be here. And I left the pedals. And thinking about it, I'm like, why didn't I just take the pedals off while I was there? I was a little bit unsure about the brake pedal because it's got air brakes. But after looking at it, I could disconnect the pedal itself and leave everything else there, and it's just disconnect the linkage, pull a pin out basically, push the pedal out of the way and zip tie it, and that would be better. Gas pedal, I know how to do that. It's like 3 little 5/16 bolts or something like that. And then I could take it out and also push it out of the way, and then we'd be set. This is a pretty rough edge, but I can live with it. I'll probably put the Pi somewhere out of the way, but I just wanted it there for now. But yeah, that's basically it. This monitor I didn't hook up. You can see I got 2 monitors, right? Yeah, that one's there. It's just there. I wanted to check it. When I close the door, it's just right there. It's close, but it's not too bad. I could actually push this a little bit further forward, I think. Not very much, I guess. For this project, I think I'm going to leave this like it is and use it for a few days, and then I'm going to keep my marker handy, and every time I kick something, I'll mark where I kicked it. So I already know I want at least 2 inches here. I think that would help. And I could use more width over here, but that's just a matter of when I move the door handle. I can't do much with it out there. Although I could unscrew this and slide it over a couple inches because the door handle's way up here. That would probably be okay. And then the next thing is I'll probably put my laptop over on the side here. But I think for now I can leave my laptop where it is and have the Pi over here. And then just kind of go with that. Not bad for a day's project though. This worked out much better than I anticipated again. Cool. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next one.
Well, that's about it. Thank you so much for watching. Yeah, that should work. Cool. I do things differently. Oh, and please, if you like any of this, it would be really awesome if you could subscribe and click that notify bell. Drop a comment if you have any questions or ideas. Share, like, comment, subscribe, notify. Oh, and Patreon if you're really an awesome kind of person. Thank you so much for watching.